we're normalizing stress,
Correct.
basically. And so like, what is that doing to our physiology?
Everything. I mean, cortisol blocks the conversion of our thyroid hormone. Cortisol is very insulinogenic. Cortisol interrupts our sleep. And of course, we need adequate amounts of cortisol to turn off inflammation. Like cortisol is an essential hormone for many, many different functions and regulations
To
and
get
within our
like get you
body.
up in the morning.
100%. It's our exactly. It's like our hen that wakes us up at, the cockadoodle
Yes.
morning. Exactly. However, yeah, there is with long-term cortisol issues, there's going to be long-term insulin issues, long-term blood sugar issues, anxiety, exhaustion. And I think people haven't actually lived a life without chronic anxiety and stress. So they like don't know what it feels like or what they're even
Hmm.
shooting for really and what
Hmm.
the goal is. So there's like a lot of unlearning that has to happen.
Hi, my name is Luella Young. I'm a psychotherapist and coach. And if you're interested in how your lifestyle is affecting your mental health, then you're at the right place. On this show, I interview various guests from across the miles and share how their lifestyle choices affects their sense of self, their wealth, and most importantly, their health. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to another fantastic episode with I Think I Can. Today I have a dietitian with me, and I think, Michelle, you are the first dietitian that I have on the show. So you're extra special.
Thank you.
Now, let me introduce Michelle. Michelle Shapiro is an integrative functional registered dietitian in New York City who has helped over thousands of clients reverse their anxiety, which I'm all about, heal longstanding gut and immune issues, and approach their weight in a loving way. Michelle has a virtual practice of 5 nutritionists where she and her team work one on one. And she hosts a podcast herself called Quiet the Diet Podcast, which sounds wonderful, where she helps listeners bridge the gap between body positivity and functional nutrition. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here. First
Gr-
dietitian of all things.
Yeah, no. And when I was thinking later, I thought, why haven't I? But why I think is because I honestly, and maybe like I'd love you to comment on this. I think there has been a period where dietitians sort of got sort of a bad rap in a way. It's like, people were kind of going totally against the food pyramids, and individual health, and I don't know, like dietitians are so based on science and blah. Do you think?
Yeah, what you're saying, I've made a joke that I'm not an anti-diet dietitian, but I'm almost an anti-dietitian dietitian sometimes, because I have seen this. There's this real push where if you think about our dietetics degree, it's within the allopathic medicine
Mm,
model. So really, it's not inherently a food first approach. It's actually a medication first approach and really
mm-hmm.
focused on management of conditions as opposed to healing, which is not the game of functional dietitians, which I am. So I believe the basis of knowledge for dietitians is incredibly important. And then I think that we need to do more to get into the mindset of incorporating Eastern and Western modalities. So dietitians generally work, yes, in hospitals under very kind of strict regimens
Yeah.
that they have to apply certain principles that are more allopathic because it's required of them. And then there's many also now who are anti-diet dietitians. So the functional dietitian, which is the one who believes in ultimately healing, it's a small group subset.
Okay, it's still a small group, right? Because yeah, I mean, I prior to being a psychotherapist, I was a speech language pathologist and I worked in the stroke wards. So I
Yes.
worked with the dietitians, right? It's sort of yeah, it was all about the swallow for my
Dysphagia.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, that's how I always sort of viewed it. It's sort of like soft texture, medium texture, texture.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the mechanical chewing versus
Yes.
puree. Yeah. It's I think most dietitians come into the career in hopes of working in wellness. And then it's just that there's not as
Mm,
many jobs available. So if you don't have the entrepreneurial spirit or you don't feel comfortable with it,
mm,
I think that a lot of them end up having to stay in the hospitals in positions that, they weren't intending on being in when they first went into it either.
right. So I'm going to ask you what is, you know, one or two most typical clients you have to come to see you in the private practice. And by the way, like, when also as a solopreneur, as a business owner,
Mhm.
and, you say you have five nutritionalists underneath you, like kudos. It's not easy, to run something like that. So good for you.
So there's five of us total, by the way. There's four. I never want to mislead.
Okay, okay,
We're a
okay.
team of five, but yes, then thank you very much for saying that. So
Mhm.
what we work with primarily is three kind of conditions or states of being, because the word condition I don't love even. People who are experiencing anxiety and panic attacks and are looking for a holistic way to, from a physical sense, start to reverse that as much as possible. And then people who have long-standing gut issues, and then also people who want to lose weight while preserving their relationship with food. So there's also a new leg of the work that I've been doing, which is with people with long COVID. So that's been more
Oh,
recent. Yeah.
interesting. Okay. On that topic, then about like losing weight. So, something that I've always kind of questioned, and I don't know if there's a clear answer out there, um, is it possible to, rev up your metabolism? And if so, how? Because
Yeah.
there has been so many chronic dieters over the years, right, that like have totally like ruined their metabolism. So,
Yeah. The way to rev up your metabolism is not to starve yourself for sure, because that's going
no.
to quickly downregulate your metabolism. I think that one of the most profound ways we can rev up our metabolism, so to speak, or make our metabolic capacity stronger is by consuming protein and consuming really high quality fats and consuming carbohydrates in a way that fits our needs. And also, I think building muscle is really important because muscle is more metabolically active than fat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I know the protein thing. Like,
Mhm.
okay, I feel I don't know. Personally, like, I feel like it's gone a little bit too crazy in the
I hear you.
protein. But like, and this is why I'm talking to you, because you're in the science, and I
Mhm.
get how muscle tissue is more, I mean, mitochondrial dense. It's more energy consuming. It's great for managing blood sugars, and things like that. I mean, yes, and the whole idea of sarcopenia. Um, it's just good all around. But I think it's where I struggle so much is the amount of protein, and it's sort of like this ride or die. We need to get a certain amount of grams in during the day, and
Yeah.
do it any way you can. And I mean, and then when you speak that way, like, I mean, anybody on a really plant forward diet would really start to question, should I do that? Because it's not like you can't do it on a very plant forward diet, but it takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of work. um
Absolutely.
so I don't know, like, it's a lot easier if you're eating meat, but like, do we really, maybe explain to me why. Like, and the whole idea too, like, just because you ingest more protein doesn't mean that your muscles also automatically just start growing. Like, I mean,
Totally.
it takes exercise, right? It takes
Right,
movement.
100%. Yeah, I think of protein as being not only in ways of muscle, but it's also the foundation for our neurotransmitters. It's the foundation for our antibodies of our immune system. It is like the cement and the columns and the glue and everything that holds our body together, in addition to the basis for many of our hormones as well. So I really view protein as being essential for like being alive. I don't know the
Yeah,
term to
yeah,
use.
yeah. Building
You know,
blocks of, yeah.
of life, really,
Hmm.
is the way I would think of it. So I think we've been very consciously under consuming protein, especially as women, to be honest with you, because I
Hmm.
don't know, protein became like a man's thing at
Yeah.
some point where it's like they need the meat, we don't.
Hmm.
And I think that I do see women really chronically under eating protein. But what I really agree with you on is it the only macronutrient we care about?
Right.
No. And also, like,
Yeah.
does it have to be you have to pound protein and count every gram and put yourself into this bad position? No. And I'll tell
Hmm.
you this also. A lot of people don't tolerate protein that well because they don't have this,
Mm.
the digestive enzymes, the stomach acid to help break it down. So just going on a radical high protein diet immediately is, not always the best choice for people either. So I see your concerns with the hype around protein
Yeah.
and everything too. And focusing on just one thing in your diet and then only doing that thing and doing that thing excessively is probably not going to create the balance that people are looking for. Absolutely.
Right, right. Yeah, and it's making us like I feel like I know I'm not the only one like this. Like, I mean, I was traveling right around this time last year. Like I was in Italy and I'm just like
Oh,
I saw some pictures come up today like on Facebook and I was like, but the reason I'm bringing this up is that I remember being in the airport and I do want to eat foods that are healthy when I'm traveling and stuff like that. And I did have two boiled eggs with me. And sort of like before I went on the plane, I sort of like tucked in behind like, like the certain part of the airport and I just like ate them quickly and then, got on the plane. I thought, okay, I'm good for a while now. And I mean, that's one thing that's great with protein like that, right? It is very satiating. So yeah.
sure. And then
Yeah.
at the same time, the interesting point you're making about Italy, which is funny, is that in other countries, like we have very different relationships with food and ways of like the passion we have around eating, the posture we have around eating, the relationship we have to the experience of eating is very different. So here we're fighting, in my opinion, like a lot more um social problems with food as well as
Exactly.
like other things, so we have to do what we can do. Like if you were in the airport on the Italy side
Oh,
instead of from here, you'd never be popping those hard-boiled eggs in. Exactly, it's sick.
exactly. They would look at me so strangely, and I'm so glad you brought this up because like I speak about or I've spoken about this on social media as well. It's sort of like the Mediterranean mindset, I like to call it, because
Yes.
it is a completely different world there. Like I think they look at us, and I'm just speaking of Italy, for example, or the Mediterranean countries, where I think in Britain and London, it's sort of a different. I think they're a little bit more like North Americans.
They're westernized, very
Yeah,
much more westernized. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Mhm.
So, but like, I mean, I remember going to like which is very typical, like a cafe in the morning with my brother, and we're ordering our cappuccinos or whatever. And it's not that they don't eat pastries. I mean, they do. Like a lot of people love their custard filled pastries, etc. with their cappuccino or the latte. And but we're looking around and like no one is obese. It's and they're not like they're enjoying their food and also in the cabinets where all these pastries are shown, there's no, you know, 540 calories or 350
No, it's just
calories.
food. It doesn't
Like
need
it's
numbers. It's
it's
food.
I know and like when has that ever worked? Listing calories like on food. It's like
It doesn't actually even
it's
influence what people eat, by the way. They do studies that they showed when they change the calories in restaurants if it influences ordering patterns, and it doesn't even do that. So that's not the
no,
core of why we choose different
no,
foods for sure. Yeah, I
no.
think the sad part of the frustrating part of this is that it's not only that people are eating more in America necessarily, it's also that the quality of the food is so poor
Yeah,
here and in in
yeah.
Canada, North America, like in Western countries that we are eating things that are higher in toxin load and lower in nutrients. So we're getting no bang for our buck and we're
Yeah.
not feeling satisfied. And so even if we were eating the same exact amount of calories, I think our metabolisms would look quite different and our hormones would look quite different,
Yeah.
which things compared to some European countries. But like you said, it concerns me because any country that becomes westernized, the chronic illness rate starts skyrocketing. Like, London like is looking a lot like New York, like these
Hmm.
countries and cities are starting to look like, and it's like a big experiment basically, and it's very obvious what the results are when highly processed foods and remove all the nutrient density from the soil. You're going to
Yeah.
have the same result every time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's super interesting. But like, yeah, let's, it's I know it would be ridiculous. It would be like them showing a bottle of olive oil and in posting the calories beside it or something like that. It's just
Can you
absolutely
imagine?
ridiculous. But let's talk a little bit about the psychology of eating, which would only
Or,
make sense when a psychotherapist meets a dietitian. Like,
of course,
we
of
should be doing
course.
that. I feel, and I was going to ask you about this too. Like I think everybody has some sort of psychological way of eating. Where this comes from, I mean, I'm sure it's a combination of many different things. Like,
Yeah.
for example, I'll just talk about myself. Like it's, I was taking my master's in Missouri actually for speech pathology, and I remember like I was sitting. I don't know why this was such a memory for me, but I was sitting with like I worked at a bike shop part time just to help me out, and I was sitting with my fellow bikey like guys, and I remember going out for a meal with them, and you know, like I remember we had pasta or something, and I remember them like, or at least one guy sitting back and going, "Oh," and I said, "Like you're super full," and he goes, "Yeah," and I said, "You like that feeling?"
Mm.
And he said, "Oh, I love feeling full."
Hmm.
And I'm just the opposite. I hate feeling full. And so, that brings me back to the whole meat thing because, like, meat is very satiating. And I feel like if I have a decent size piece of meat, I'm not really hungry for the other things that are there, which is not really good, right? Like, I mean, especially if it's like vegetables. So, and I think some people eat for like society,
Satiety.
satiety,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
Satiation, yes, satiety. And then others like maybe more for pleasure. And I think this is the whole like, gathering together at the end of the day and or a mother or father creating a beautiful meal and sharing it with their children and sharing stories. And to me, that sort of falls under pleasure. And then there's the emotional piece as well, which I think that's the part that can really hijack people, right? I think that's where we all get sort of messed up a little bit is sort of the emotional part of eating. I think there's something to be said about that, like in terms of, you know, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Childlike, the memories, like the nostalgia, like, I
Sure,
mean,
nostalgia. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So what's like when you work with clients, then what are you seeing when there's like when their relationship with food is off?
Yeah, it's usually that they are utilizing food as a tool for handling physical or emotional discomfort, and that food can help to alter our hormones. Food can help to make us feel better in the moment. And
Mm,
since a lot of my clients are people who are chronically ill, they usually do not feel well a lot of the time. And food is
right.
a tool to make them feel better. So I couldn't possibly
Mm,
have less judgment for it. I really understand. The
mm,
question is, again, what's driving that behavior? And then more importantly, like, how do we at the root help people to maybe find other things that give them joy. And then these foods themselves are also quite biologically addicting, a lot of them, and
yeah.
provide a lot of juicy, hormone dopamine rewards in our brain. So I think people are validly reaching for them to feel better when they don't feel well, but it has the side effect of influencing their health in a way they aren't wanting.
Yeah, yeah. Good point. Yeah. So your job then is to like, I mean, your job's hard because if they're physically struggling, and they're, I mean, more or less, I mean, food addiction is a real thing.
Of
It is a
course.
real thing.
Yeah, of
Yeah. And they're
course.
addicted. So how do you work with someone like that? Like when they're
Yeah. So, oh no, go ahead.
beast.
I don't. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I am one of a very interesting type of practitioner because there's a lot of practitioners who are like functional, like Eastern and Western integrative dietitians who focus very much on the physical body and a little bit on the mental piece of things. And then there's kind of like intuitive eating dietitians and the ones who say you have to only focus on things from a psychological perspective, which I would say you should lead to the psychologist, but that's a different, conversation.
Yeah. No.
I'm
Yeah.
kind of bridging how the mind and the body connect and communicate with each other. So I could be giving interventions to clients that are both physically based and emotionally based to help them in the coaching counseling process. So, for instance, when it comes to binge eating, I think a lot of people think of binge eating as being this like sabotaging effort. Like people are like, oh, I'm hurting myself. Why am I doing this to myself? And I'm like, no, you're not doing it on purpose. Obviously, it's preserving you. It's doing something. It's saving you in some way. It's protecting you in some way. So what we'll do is kind of like parse out the different voices that we'll hear around binge eating, which is like, oh, I shouldn't eat that. Wait, maybe I should eat that. It'll feel really good. Don't eat that. Screw it. I'm going to eat that. And we kind of get to know those different voices, a little bit like an internal family systems model, but one that's within scope, obviously within my realm, and learning like how do we, the different parts of us, and do, some level of that kind of interaction and understanding that. At the same time, I might be recommending to someone who's binge eating, let's make sure you're eating regularly, because if you get too hungry, it's going to leave you more open to binge eating. Or we might be doing a visualization about what it's going to feel like to feel free from thoughts around food. Like it really depends on the person, but I give all of my clients a 10-page battle plan, like as I call it, which is sparsing it up into lifestyle, supplement, nutrition, if they need a little bit of breathing, a little vagus nerve support, and target it from every angle, because just a physical approach is not enough and just an emotional approach is not enough either.
No. Yeah, you're right. You have to come, yeah, multifaceted approach, 100%. So let me ask you, because I struggle with this a little bit. Like, I mean, like, the I'm not gonna speak about Ozempic like I researched it like thoroughly or anything like that. I don't know how much research you've done with it or whether or not you're seeing clients that have
Of course.
started taking it. But I mean, I understand. Okay, maybe let me start like this. Okay, do you feel like type 2 diabetes is a lifestyle disease?
That's an extremely good question. And I can definitely talk about GLP-1 medications for sure.
Okay.
I feel that diabetes is a systemic lifestyle disease, which means that when you have lifestyle issues, when you have combined with an environment issue, which is that our food system, our medications, our water supply, our soil is deprived of nutrients, that this is the exact result that can happen. Do I believe that type 2 diabetes in some cases can be reversed through lifestyle modification? Sure. Do I believe in all cases it can? No. It really depends on the person. Do I think it's normal that there are children getting type 2 diabetes at skyrocketing rates who are doing what are being fed ads by sugar laden like food marketers? No, I think it's extremely disturbing. And I think it's certainly a piece of this puzzle. I don't think type 2 diabetes happens randomly, although I will say that there are unique cases where it could actually happen from like a virus. Like there are interesting things that can happen because obviously it's anything that happens to the pancreas can influence our beta cells of our pancreas and ultimately insulin. I think that it's not as simple as if everyone lost weight, they'd stop having type 2 diabetes. But it is as simple as we can clearly see what the root causes of type 2 diabetes are. And it's many different layers of issues within our healthcare system and the way that we view the body in America, in my opinion, which is why our rates are so much rapidly increasing compared to other countries.
Yeah, yeah. I think what you're saying is, you know, there are those individuals that are prone or have, prone to being at a higher risk. And then coupled with, perhaps environment, like a busy lifestyle where, they're in a lot of meetings or they're traveling a lot of,
No
yeah,
sleep, right?
yeah,
Sleep is a huge moderator of our insulin
yeah,
signaling pathways. Yeah, I
yeah.
think of type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance as being like cellular communication issues with a root
Mm-hmm.
cause of inflammation causing those cellular communication issues.
Mm-hmm.
And inflammation is such like a
Yeah,
broad term, and such
yeah,
a catchphrase now, but
yeah.
that, yes, all of the things we're talking about contribute to that low grade inflammation, which then pops up as all
Right.
these different conditions.
Yeah. 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 So, I mean, see, and like, I guess, I mean, that piggybacks with Ozempic because, like,
Oh, yeah.
I feel that we have to bring this rate down. It's a huge problem. The amount of type 2 diabetes it's running rampant. And
Mhm.
but, and then obesity. Like, so you would say, okay, Ozempic should be used for or is meant for people suffering, from conditions
Well,
of
it's actually for blood
diabetes.
sugar issues, yeah, diabetes, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about obese people using this drug? Like,
Yeah. It's a
yeah.
good question.
Okay.
I have as per usual, I have a complicated answer.
Okay.
So I want us to
Well,
think
but
of,
that tells me it's a good answer, right?
I
Because
I hope so.
absolutes don't work. Yeah.
No, yeah, I'm the middle ground person. I'm known for the nuance. I actually, and then I will tell you about how I had to delete my TikTok because I got so harassed about this topic that I'm talking about. If we think of our bodies like a car, and we think of the way that our bodies utilize energy as like the fuel tank in the car,
Mm-hmm.
basically over time, if you have metabolic syndrome, and I know everyone likes to say calories in, calories out is the only way to lose weight. In a car that's running perfectly, if you pour fuel in the tank and then you use the fuel, calories in, calories out, it'll work great. What people with metabolic syndrome, it's like someone took a bat to the car and started savagely beating that car, and the car is all malfunctioning and not working anymore. So you pour fuel in the fuel tank, it's coming out of the hood of the car. And
Mm.
I should have used bike as a reference because you were in the bike shop, by the way. That was my chance. I just don't, I wouldn't even know the words for the bike shop. But I think that's really the visual I want you to have. So now that people are driving cars that are not functioning optimally, we have to probably do something radical to kind of correct it. And that's really what these drugs do is they radically work to, they're very forceful, they're very strong, and they radically work to not only help people not have an appetite, but to correct the metabolic issues that are going on. So if we were living in a world where we didn't have our cars all messed up, which I wish we could just get to the root cause of the problem and not have that happen in the first place. But unfortunately, we're at a point where that is the case for a lot of people. So I've seen these drugs, the GLP-1 drugs, Ozempic, Mounjaro, Wegovy, be extremely effective for some people in a way where those people were counting calories for years. I mean, truly, seriously diligent, but the car wasn't functioning. It just wasn't doing what it needed to do. And then I've seen other people who it's actually caused huge health issues for them taking the medications. So it's really the right tool for the right person at the right time. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
what's really important about these medications. I have been a functional dietitian for 10 years. My entire time being a functional dietitian, all of my colleagues who are functional med docs have been prescribing these medications. So it's very funny that it's like people are asking me so much about it in the last year. I'm like, I don't think about it that much because they've been using them for 10 years. Functional medicine doctors, some of
Really?
them have been using them for 15 years. Yeah, they're
Wow.
not new. These are not new drugs.
Hmm.
They just became popularized by celebrities, honestly. And that's
Hmm.
what happened. And then
Wow.
came the Oprah special, which is what
Yeah.
got my TikTok canceled. I canceled myself from TikTok. I posted that I don't believe that obesity is an incurable disease. I believe that obesity is a symptom because
Yes, I
like it's
agree.
just weight. It just means you're carrying extra weight. I mean, it is literally a metric that is a symptom. It's like if you went to the doctor and you had a fever and then fever was on your medical chart permanently. Like if you are ever obese, it says on your medical chart, disease of obesity. And to me, it's like, well, that's one metric. It's just measuring your height over your weight.
Hmm.
That's all that it's measuring. So
Hmm.
I haven't found, and your weight over your height. I haven't I find that people who identify themselves as I am an obese person now,
Hmm.
that can feel very limiting for them when I think there's
Hmm.
so many tools and options available. So I said that on TikTok. And like you've noticed, Luella, like we've spoke about right before we started, people were like, I'm going to get your license revoked for saying obesity is not a disease. You don't know anything. And I'm like, why don't you sit with a couple thousand people? I also lost 1,000. I mean, I lost 100 pounds 10 years ago. So I
Wow.
can speak to my own experience too. And I didn't want
Yeah.
to be called obese. I'm a person. I'm not an obese, like,
Right.
so for
Right.
myself, and then people were so vicious that I was like, I'm literally deleting TikTok because it was so, I'm like, this is something that's not supposed to be polarizing. I wasn't even saying it to be polarizing, but
Right.
the way that we are where we're at right now is people want to victimize themselves. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to let you victimize yourself because I'm going to, my goal is to help you. I want to actually help you. And I know victimizing yourself is not going to help you, but people they want to victimize themselves right now. They want to say, I'm an obese person and there's nothing I can do unless I pay for this $500 a month medication. And
Hmm.
no one understands weight loss resistance experience more than I do. Like I sit with clients who have real weight loss resistance. The
Right.
experience is real. They cannot lose weight and they are doing everything. It's not their fault, but it doesn't mean that they have an incurable disease. It just means we have to find the path. And it's harder and it's really freaking hard. And you can use those medications. And I still don't think they're a cure for an incurable disease. I can't get behind that. Can't do it.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, okay. Like bringing it back to the bike analogy, like what you
Yeah.
said makes sense because I'm thinking like I have a bike, you have a bike, but my bike is stuck on a
Mhm.
high gear. And you're telling me, Luella, you got a bike just like I got a bike. Get up that hill. And I'm kind of going, like, I'm dying here. You have no
Exactly.
idea. But see, like, and like, so I really like what you said about obesity because I completely agree. But I'm still kind of stuck on the type 2 diabetes because let's say we took someone who's suffering with obesity and someone who's suffering with type 2 diabetes and we say we're gonna put you in a plane and we're gonna put you in Italy, Tuscany countryside, and we're
Mhm.
gonna be there with you for 3 months, and we're going to give you, we're not going to be snacking all day. We'll just do 3 meals, and they're
Mhm.
going to be very, you know, healthy, lack of a better
Sure.
word, very like whatever. Like do you not think the type 2 diabetic would would possibly correct because there is such a thing as reversing type 2 diabetes.
Heck yeah,
So,
there is. So
yeah.
no, and I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
Um, there is such experiment. It's called The Biggest Loser, and and they basically put you on a ranch in nature and have you working out, and eating
But
very few calories.
but wasn't that like I didn't I've never watched it, but wasn't that obsessive like where it's like
Yeah,
stressful to them?
it's very stressful. You're 100% right. So I'll tell you this: if we all lived in Italy, if all of us moved to Italy together and we stopped working compulsive hours, like the factors that are against people to just think that calories alone is going to reverse this thing is wild. Like, cortisol, which is one of our main stress hormones, as you
Yeah.
of course know, has like steroid like activities for our blood sugar.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's
Mm-hmm.
very insulinogenic. So like
Mm-hmm.
you're saying, unless we took everyone to it, I would say it wouldn't even work in a different place in America. And unless it was very stressful, I think it would take years to undo all of the factors in American lifestyle. I think 3 months, would people temporarily lose weight? Yes. Would their cells be nourished after that? Would they be able to, would the car be fixed? No, I think it would take a lot longer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wish we all could do that. And that would be what a start that would be.
Yeah,
Yes, I
yeah,
agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I mean, like what you're saying makes sense. I mean, we can't expect the government to, even if it was still in, because I mean, there's very beautiful places in North America as
Oh my
well.
gosh, of
We don't
course.
know. Yeah, we can shuttle them there as well. But yeah, like yeah, it's mindset. It's just tons of different factors. So I do.
You'd have to rewrite American culture.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
the so if someone's born in Italy, like yeah, like the chances, yes. So in theory, what you're saying is 100% true that the antidote to type 2 diabetes would be living like a normal person who is
yeah,
not extremely stressed, connected
yeah.
to nature, socializing with friends, eating beautiful meals with friends, making our own food. Like, actually, I'm going to revise my answer. Yes, if it was a very non-stressful environment and they could literally leave all of their stressors behind,
Okay, thank
I
you.
think it would make a huge impact.
Yeah,
I am a functional dietitian. I believe in reversing
yeah,
conditions. I'm with you. Like I do not believe we manage. I think we are, it's just if you like you said, if it's the biggest loser, it's a very stressful environment, even
yeah,
like it's but people would literally have to go to Italy for it, like you're saying, because you would need the actual food supply to be there too. What's
yeah,
stacked against people here is so radical and so high. They need radical solutions, and it would literally take. It's a now the population of America is 300 million, and 70% is overweight or obese. So we'd have to do over 200 million people. So
yeah.
yeah,
And
I
and
like your dream though. I like it.
yeah, because I know like yeah, like even Japan, I think, there are certain countries that have said no more to this and they're starting in the schools and there's no such thing as packed lunches anymore. It's sort of you're eating what we're eating in school and we're creating, beautiful nutritional food for you. Like they've taken over, like the government is saying, no, we're doing it this way
Well, our government
because
profits off of us.
exactly.
So it's
I
the
know.
opposite here.
I
It's it's
know.
it's to the
Money.
next level opposite here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Money talks.
Yeah, I mean literally there's like food companies have lobbies. I mean they literally we have corporatism in this country. So it's not only that our government doesn't look out for us, our government literally plays a hand in our
Yeah.
food recommendations. And this is something that's really important too. It's not that people don't follow my plate or my pyramid. They
Mhm.
followed it really well. It's that the
Yeah.
recommendations were from grain companies and from lobbies, heart healthy lobbies.
Hmm.
Like it literally was the wrong recommendations. It wasn't that people weren't doing it. It's that the guidance was wrong. And
Right.
we were kind of in this experiment for the past 40
Exactly.
years. Look at the result.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, it's kind of funny. Like as you're talking, like two of my kids right now just took like after their exams, they just escaped and they flew to Nashville. They just picked a spot
Oh,
in the States and they just said we're gonna have a fun for a few days. And so they went with a few friends and my daughter sent me some pictures yesterday. I don't even know what the brand name is now, but she had this box of donuts open and she said, "Oh my God, these are so good." And I didn't recognize the brand and I just kind of thought, keep them there. Like,
yeah, I'm good. Yeah, exactly.
do
Yeah.
not bring this past the border, please.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like,
Yeah.
and thank you for the picture. That's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I don't even want to know why they're so good. Yeah, it is scary because it's honestly like I know these chemists in these labs are just kind of going, like how
You're
can
right.
we make you addicted to this? Like,
They
this
literally
is
attach like electrodes to people's brains and see how addicting. These are also
God.
the same, these food marketers are the same guys as like the big tobacco guys. They're the same people. It's not even like they are
Yes.
literally the same people. And now I'm going to tell you also, which is my biggest frustration of life right now, is that registered dietitians, as you know, we have a bad rap.
Yeah.
Met Part of it is because not all at all, of course. Many registered dietitians now have this new thing where they're like, you can't villainize food companies. You can't, because it'll lead to people having disordered relationships with food or eating disorders. So my answer is always, I'm going to shame food companies all
Yeah.
day, but I'll
Yeah.
never shame a person for eating it. And I will never do that.
Yeah.
But I'm going to continue shaming food companies, and dietitians will keep telling me that it's going to cause eating disorders for me to say the unhealthy part of food companies. And my answer is, aren't we dietitians? Isn't the point for you to be focused on the nutrition quality of
Oh
things,
my
not the
God.
psychological? You're not treating, and also, why are you only speaking to the 10% of the population who has eating disorders and not the 70% of the population who's metabolically impaired? Why don't they get a fair shake? Why don't they get real information? So unfair.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. I mean, that's actually scary that you're getting that message. Like
Mhm.
it means that like, there's sort of like brainwashing,
Yes, I know you
Oh,
get it.
oh
This is
my
the psychologist
God.
in you. You get it
Oh
exactly. That's
God.
what this. And I'll post something like recently. I made a post like 2 days ago. I made a post and said, Ensure. It's like those smoothies. You've seen that.
Yeah.
Of course you
Yeah.
do in the hospitals.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
ingredient. I'm like you as honestly as an SLP when during that time of your work, that's all you were using. That is the single handedly Ensure and Boost. And I
Yeah.
have a funny accent for people. Ensure is what I'm saying. Ensure, that company.
Yeah. I
Um,
like your accent. I picked up on that as a speech pathologist. So
exactly. Yeah. Just, Queens, born and bred, New York.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
but I left the nursing homes because I looked at the ingredients in the Ensure and I was like, I'm not giving these to elderly, sick people who are vulnerable because the ingredients are such trash. So I basically said, one thing that food marketers have done, I've never spoken about this on a podcast because it's so wild, is they've made it so that these foods that are so unhealthy are viewed as more accessible to people. So it's part of their marketing strategy. So they've made like cereals more accessible. Ensure is more accessible. And I'm like, oats are in the same aisle. Like
Right.
potatoes are in the same aisle. Like, why would you need, when it comes to cereal, you don't need these foods. And they
No.
market it specifically to vulnerable people and saying, this is for you because it's accessible to you. And this is a message that dietitians propagate and were attacking and harassing me the other day, saying you can't say that those foods are bad because you're taking away something that's accessible for people. And you're shaming them. And I'm like, no, I'm not shaming them. I'm trying to literally save them. Are you going to be with their family members in the hospital injecting insulin with them? Are
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
you protect them over your own feelings? Protect
Right.
these people. It's not fair. We need to protect vulnerable people as opposed to exposing them to freaking brainwashing, like you're
E-
saying.
Exactly. What do you mean accessible? What do you mean?
Yeah, it's really complicated. It's like this weird thing where it's like these highly processed foods are for marginalized people. So they target marginalized people and they make dietitians, and it's usually in full transparency, like really white, thin dietitians who are like saying like, oh, you know what? They can't afford anything else. So this is what they can afford. This is what's accessible for them. Like it's like they almost made it like there's food for those with like socioeconomic burden. There's foods for
Oh,
those, but food companies have created this narrative that is so wrong. And I'm like, Ensure is like $5 a bottle. Like it's really expensive. Like
yeah.
like getting meat for your whole family would be much cheaper. And then you mix that with a potato, the price per food is the same. So they say people in food deserts can't get food. They can only get Ensure. And I'm like, well, that's a problem. Let's work on that as opposed to
Exactly.
just saying Ensure is okay. Like help people, instead of just
Right.
accepting it. I think
Yeah.
it's one of the most grotesque version of these because you're targeting marginalized people and then you're having other dietitians sign off on it.
Exactly. Oh my God. It's actually scary. It really is. Well, you're gonna have to hire more people.
I know, and they're gonna have to be as yelly as I am because
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not gonna back down anytime soon, and I can be
yeah.
harassed. And I think when we look back in 10 years from now and 20 years from now, we're gonna have like everyone's eyes are going to be open and we're going to be like, whoa, what was that? Why were we doing that? And
Right.
I'm so hopeful to say I've had some dietitians recently in my DMs being like, I'm turning the ship around. I was totally wrong. I don't know why I was promoting that. And I'm like, yay. I'm
Oh,
glad that
good.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm glad my impassioned post did something.
It's good. Good thing you're a New Yorker. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I'm this way. I was
Yeah.
made this way to be the loudest, scariest voice. Exactly.
Exactly. Exactly. God planted you in New York for a reason. So, well, okay. So let's talk about cortisol. I want to talk about that a little bit. How, like, I know it's you're right. Like, I mean, I do feel sorry for people because we're also put in this like do more, faster, quicker, harder. And then like, even with AI coming in too, the way it is, it's sort of like, well, why, write your blog when you could stick it in, I don't know, yeah, chat GP and all these other things that are popping out and have this robot created for you. And well, maybe I don't want to do that. Well, why wouldn't you want to do that? You just saved yourself an hour. It's sort of like, but it's not
Mm,
really me. Well, no one cares. It's sort of like everything's harder, faster, stronger, and then like the cortisol. Then it's like it's revving it up for us too. Like nothing's fast enough anymore. So it's just causing more and more like adrenaline, noradrenaline, and
exactly.
cortisol to be just like we're normalizing stress
Correct.
basically. And so like what is that doing to our physiology?
Everything. I mean, cortisol blocks the conversion of our thyroid hormone. Cortisol is very insulinogenic. Cortisol interrupts our sleep. And of course, we need adequate amounts of cortisol to turn off inflammation. Like cortisol is an essential hormone for many, many different functions and
To
regulations and within our
get you
body.
up in the morning.
100%. It's our exactly. It's like our hen that wakes us up that, the cockadoodle
Yes.
morning. Exactly. However, yeah, there is with long-term cortisol issues, there's going to be long-term insulin issues, long-term blood sugar issues, anxiety, exhaustion. And I think, you know, my consideration is with all this is that I think people haven't actually lived a life without chronic anxiety and stress. So they like don't know what it feels like or what they're even
Hmm.
shooting for really and what the
Hmm.
goal is. So there's like a lot of unlearning that has to happen in I'm sure any work you do, any work I do in
Yeah.
trying to like even what is it like to like what does it feel like to be alive kind of because people are so hopped up on these stress hormones and then
Hmm.
tanking with that low
Mm.
cortisol later on. And just
Mm.
that's what the power of these tests do, like Dutch testing and these other cortisol tests. You can do like a salivary cortisol test. It shows us like here's stress inside of your body and here's what it's doing because
Hmm.
we just don't believe that stress affects our health until it
Yeah.
really affects our health. We don't believe it.
Yeah. No, 100%. And this is why, like, you guys, you're hearing Michelle, like, functional, integrative. What does that mean? And it, like, to me, a nice way of summing it up is to see the body as a system. Like when I mentioned cortisol, she spoke of, low thyroid, um, poor blood sugar regulation. I mean, we
Right.
could
I'm
even
going
say,
organs. Yeah, that's how I think of it. The organs, exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and we can even say like it. I know low thyroid would also affect cholesterol.
exactly.
And it's sort of like so. We're fighting like heart disease is the number one killer right now, higher than cancer. And here we're kind of go like, it's so stupid. Like then you hear people, well, it has to be plant forward or it has to be carnivore or we're going after the food so
Yeah,
much when really it's the stress. Like,
correct.
I mean, I feel like, I mean, and it's kind of funny when I was taking my functional medicine certification it was kind of nice because like in some ways I felt like what am I doing here? Like I have no real medical background except for what I learned in anatomy, like for speech pathology and stuff like that. And then but then at the end of the day I always kind of felt good because you know they always brought it back to stress. And it's sort of like, but you need to talk to your clients about, stress. And I was like, yes, yes, yes,
Yeah, and you're so right. And people don't like believe that stress is important because it's not something that we can tangibly know we're reducing. And
Hmm.
it's not something we believe we can see when it comes to
Yeah.
like tests or anything. That's why these
Yeah.
like medicine tests are so important. It's really like clients have to like see it happen for them and they have to
Yeah.
feel better. And then they're like, oh, I
Yeah.
think we see reductions in stress when people are suffering from like severe panic attacks and anxiety. They'll have reduction in frequency and severity. So certainly they'll notice that. But stress is such like an intangible, like energy thing that people think, but it's really quite real and it affects every
Yeah.
cell of our body, every organ of our body. And it's so visible, I think, in tests with clients too, which I think is very relaxing for people to feel like, oh, if I'm doing stress reduction or nervous system work, it's like real. That's amazing that
Hmm.
it's real.
Yeah. So what is your favorite test to show that? Which one do you use mainly? Is it the Dutch or do you
Yeah, I think
use?
Dutch is incredible.
Yeah.
And I think I love that you said functional medicine is a systems theory because a lot of people view functional medicine as just like supplements and testing. And I'm like, no, no, that's conventional medicine. That is,
Right,
if
right,
you
exactly.
prescribe a supplement for a problem, that's conventional medicine. That's not functional medicine. It's really like you said, when I'm in a like session with a client, I'm like, this part of their body's lighting up in my head. I'm like, this organ system, this organ, this organ. And I'm thinking, how are they connected? And I can attach like sleep goes into this liver, then this, and I can think about each lifestyle piece and how it goes into this bigger system. And that is the
Hmm.
heart of functional medicine, is viewing the body and the soul as one whole system.
Hmm.
And how do we work with and balance that system using our own internal resources. Really, that's really the goal of it. But I do
Right.
I do like Dutch testing and I do like those tests, but
Hmm.
it's always more important to target those foundations with people first.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah. Okay. So like since you spoke about supplements, would you say that like are there some foundational ones? Like, do you take a multivitamin? Like, if you wanted to speak a little bit about
Yeah,
that. Okay.
I definitely do not take a multivitamin. I'm pretty not into multivitamins, to be honest
Okay.
with you, because everyone's body has different needs. I
Mm-hmm.
would say most people at some point in their life are going to need some like krill oil for some vitamin D. Like that will happen. We just don't spend time outdoors, so we don't have sun access. So that will happen
Yeah.
at some point. People often will have to address at some point a B12 deficiency. And then
Mm-hmm.
something that's almost always deficient in everyone's diet because of the soil is magnesium. So that's something
Yeah.
that most people will need at some point in their life as well.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's so individualized. And I am so nervous
Mm-hmm.
about multivitamins because of just taking like excess iron in women can be a concern. And men, actually more so men for iron even. But I like to get isolated ones of supplements, very specific and targeted. And I think that I would always prefer people to like get natural sunlight before they have to supplement. But in
Yeah.
oftentimes like we're working in offices, so that's not even possible.
Okay. And so how about isolated amino acids? Like let's say, like I said, like I mentioned, I'm not somebody like I know it's not healthy, but I do like grazing more because I don't like that fullness feeling. So if I'm worried about not getting enough protein and amino acids are the building blocks of protein, what do you think about supplements that isolate amino acids?
Yeah, I like as long as it's a complete amino acid supplement and it has all
Okay.
essential amino acids, I
Okay.
like it. I will also tell you that interestingly, because you're using the term isolated amino acids, there are actually supplements that are like one amino acid, and
Right.
there's two that I use and I am obsessed with for mood. One of them is glycine powder, which
Oh.
is really supportive specifically for panic attacks because these
Mm.
amino acids also are the building blocks for our neurotransmitters,
Mm-hmm.
incredibly helpful. And then there's one called serine, but it's phosphorylated serine, a specific type, which is really helpful for like blunting the cortisol response if you're waking up at 3 a.m. And it is
Yeah.
amazing for anxiety too. So this, please check with your doctor before anyone listening listens. This is not nutrition advice, just talking about supplements that I like, but isolated amino acids can be incredibly important for different things. And then a collection of amino acids, yeah, I think is very supportive for people, especially who may have malabsorption issues. They're low stomach
Yes.
acid. They're not
Yeah.
able to break down the longer chains of amino acids in their stomach. I think it's
Yeah.
really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Phosphatidylserine, right?
Magic. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, exactly.
so,
I actually forgot about that one.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's phosphorylated serine or phosphatidyl, very similar, but like both of them are amazing
Hmm.
for anxiety
Yeah.
and amazing for that cortisol response.
Yeah. Yeah. So anybody listening, just go to your favorite health food store and ask them about it. And
Yep.
yeah. So you're right. That's a good point. So when we do wake up at 3 a.m., why is that?
Yeah, so I have one specific reason that I do see this happening often, which is low blood sugar. So
Mm.
cortisol is our rising hormone, and cortisol is also our get some blood sugar hormone. So what happens is when your blood sugar drops, your body sources glucose internally. And our body has this amazing process where it's able to take other forms of energy and convert them into glucose when we don't have glucose available. It's a process called gluconeogenesis, which means glucose from
Hmm.
non-glucose things. Cortisol stimulates gluconeogenesis. So basically, when your blood sugar drops, your body will grab cortisol and say, nudge cortisol and say, hi, can you get me some glucose? And that's why people will
Mm.
specifically wake up at 3 a.m. because cortisol is our rising hormone and it shoots off early, thinking there's an emergency because
Mm.
cortisol was responsive to emergencies and thinking, oh, I need to wake this person up. Low blood sugar can give a sense of emergency for people. So oftentimes I see people in chronic stress with fluctuating blood sugars and fluctuating cortisol. So I have people, if they are waking up at 3 a.m. and they're noticing it's after they started intermittent fasting or a very low carb diet, I would say spread those meals out, add more carbs back in generally, because that could be a really clear root cause for why you're waking up at 3 a.m.
Okay. Do you have more time? Like we're at the top of the
I
hour. How
have,
much time do you have?
I think I have a call at 12:15. I have a call at 12:15. So I can do like 6 more minutes. Let's rock.
Okay, okay, let's go. What's your views on intermittent fasting and the are you like breakfast person, things like that? Because so many people are skipping breakfast now and possibly just going to one meal a day.
So there are certain people that I think intermittent fasting works really well for, and the people who it works really well for are usually the people promoting it, aka like fit men in their 30s. I think they do
Yeah,
really, really well with it. I think they
yeah.
have maybe a higher proportion of muscle mass. And I think that their bodies aren't as primed to be reactive to cortisol. I
Mm,
almost never recommend intermittent fasting for menstruating women,
okay.
specifically because your body's very cortisol reactive and your hormones are reactive to cortisol. So it can block the production of your sex hormones. So I will watch my clients do intermittent fasting for even a few weeks, and their
Mm-hmm.
sex hormones completely change. Their cortisol completely changes, even from that short period of time. So I usually don't, but there's exceptions. There's
Mm-hmm.
some people do great with it. I haven't seen it and I've worked with a couple thousand clients, but I believe it. I'm sure there are people, it's not my people usually who feel really
Right.
well with it. I
Yeah.
also myself for my cortisol management and for other of my clients, I have a little rule, which is try to have 30 grams of protein and 30 grams of carbs within 30 minutes of waking up, which will
Mm.
help stabilize blood sugar throughout the day and will help stabilize cortisol patterns throughout the day as well.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So what's your go-to in the morning then? Like for 30
Okay.
grams, like that sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, so I have to sometimes supplement with a little bit, like half of a protein shake if I need to.
Mm-hmm.
I also will like put protein powder in my oatmeal and make it a little like creamier or something like that. But if I'm not, I'll do like one or two small like or like grass-fed like little
Yeah.
breakfast sausages that are more
Yeah.
beef usually. I don't eat pork. And then I'll do two eggs and then I'll have like half a Japanese sweet potato. That's been my
Mm.
breakfast for a long time, which I have stuck with. I'm also a person, first of all, I sleep from 8:30 p.m. to 4:30 a.m. I am
Good
like
for
an
you.
it's just how
I
my body
love
is.
that.
Yeah, I
Especially from
sleep very
someone who's
early.
younger like this. No, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and that so I usually have to have some of those foods prepped before. So I'll sometimes eat like chicken, or like I'll eat smoked salmon in the morning, but I eat stuff that people would eat for dinner, for breakfast, and don't mind also. Like I'm eager to get a nice balanced breakfast in though. But yes, that's been my sleep schedule for a very long time.
Wow. It's so funny you say that because I'm just trying now. Like to me, like 5:15, like that's when I've been setting my alarm and I've been trying to go to bed earlier. And yeah, I'm kind of running at 6:30, maybe 7, like 8, I'm not getting enough.
Well, it's better to get enough sleep than it is to wake up earlier, honestly.
Yeah, I
You have
know.
to get those hours. I know
I have to.
it's if I go to bed at 9:30, I don't set an alarm also, like because the time I wake up is always early enough. Obviously,
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
like my first client's never until 9, so I always have like 5 hours before that anyway.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if I'm go to bed at 10 at some point, like I will like not let myself leave bed until 6. Like I have to make sure that I'm getting those 7 to 8 hours, even
Good for
though I like to
you.
sleep later. Yeah.
Yeah. S- what was it? Yeah, and you're in New York, the city that never sleeps, and you're going to bed at 8:30. Like what the hell?
It is a what
Gir-
the hell situation. And I'm 32 and I've been doing it even in my 20s basically. This is the truth and this is the honest truth. I am the type of person where I'm like an artist where if I'm like up at 11, I will be up the entire night with like creative ideas. Like nothing good
Yeah,
happens for me at night.
yeah.
I'm either asleep. People think it's because I'm tired and it's like the opposite. It's because I get a second wind at some point and I
Mm,
can't be awake for the second wind because
mm,
I will be up because I get like excited at night and
yeah,
I'm like, be
yeah.
asleep during this time. Nothing needs to happen during this time. But there's really like that's my window is I really like to be asleep before 9:30, before the fun starts. And I'm like up creating, writing, and doing things like that.
Wonderful. Okay, I was gonna say, like, what are you doing? Working out, working at your business, like, yeah, blogs, posts, all those things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I also if I'm recording a podcast or something, I'll have a moment of inspiration. I also just like will have theories about nutrition and I just am like, oh, I have to get this out so I can put this into some sort of information. But I just will get like hits
Yeah.
that'll happen, especially at night where I have the creative energy during the day, of course, but it's like too strong at night where I'm like, we can sleep now. But it could be anything. It could be anything that I'm thinking about working on,
Yeah.
something to make like a process of my business more efficient. But I don't need to have them at 2 a.m. I could have those thoughts, at 5:15 a.m. instead.
Exactly. No, wonderful. And I think I should ask you before you leave,
Yeah.
because guests are probably wondering, how did you rid yourself of 100 pounds?
Yeah, so I did it in a way I would never recommend to other
Okay.
people. I went on a drastic, I lost it in about 4 months' time, about
Ooh.
3 to 4 months' time. Yeah. Horrible plan. I grew up in Queens, New York, which is the most diverse, incredible place in the entire world. I had an amazing life growing up. I never cared that I was in a larger body. I had been in a larger body my whole life. It didn't inhibit me from a physical, emotional level. But then I was going to school in Delaware, which is a much more homogenous place where I was like, oh, people are going to judge me for my weight. I actually need to radically lose weight before I go away to school. So I went on this radical weight loss journey. It was basically just eating, and I'm issuing a trigger warning, but like 300 calories a day. And just have this unfortunate part of my personality where if I say I'm going to do it, I'm gonna do it. And I really could not recommend it less because I was then sick during my time in college, like with a lot of
Mm.
chronic illness because my body was like, the stress. Why did you just do
Oh
that to
my
me? And I
God.
started getting all these autoimmune conditions and all this stuff popping up from this state of extreme scarcity. So it's really been the magic of my career to help people lose it correctly the first time so that they don't end up
Mhm.
having to fix everything like I had to after.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Okay. This is what you don't do. No kidding.
Exactly. This is a telltale story of don't do this. Please,
Yeah.
everyone, don't do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to get you back. I think I'm quite happy with what we went through.
We did
Wouldn't
it.
mind talking about eating disorders a little bit more with you because I
Oh, I'll
mean,
come back on. We could do a whole episode on it, on disordered eating and eating disorders. Absolutely.
wonderful, wonderful.
It was
Okay.
wonderful sitting with you. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for your time. And everyone else, have a great week. We'll see you back here in a week. Bye.
Beautiful.
Thanks once again for joining me on another great episode of I Think I Can podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe below so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And until next week, treat each day like it was your last, because each new day is a privilege that we shan't take for granted. Cheers and have a great week. Bye-bye.